Well, hello, fellow watercolor lovers, and welcome back to my channel. This is Carol King, Carol Robin King, officially, and doing the fifth of a series on textures in watercolor. And today we're going to do alcohol, sponges, rice and pasta, and sandpaper. And I'm actually going to start with the sandpaper because I need it to be able to dry while we're doing the others, so that otherwise you can't really use the sandpaper. It has to be completely dry. So we are doing a series of 20 plus. I've actually found two more that I want to do, so it's probably going to wind up being 24 of textures in watercolor that you can use to spruce up your paintings or add interests or whatever. Down here, we're just going to pretend this is like a barn fence or cabin walls or something that I want to add texture to. So I'm going to pretend that it's wood. Probably use one of my other methods just to increase the look of wood. I'm just mixing my favorite wood colors, and that is ultramarine blue with burnt sienna. And a little bit of Payne's Gray from time to time. That was Payne's Gray just now. And normally I would leave some white spots, but I'm not doing that this time because I want to show you how you can create those with sandpaper. So, and you can lift areas where you might have made a mistake or something. So while this is still wet, I want to get a little darker so that you can enjoy the effects better. It really needs to be dark enough to be able to see. And then I will go ahead and scratch in some wood texture. Let's see here. I just saw that thing. There it is. I'm going to use a metal palette knife just to scratch in the wood texture. So we got various sizes of slats here. And then maybe just scratch in some ideas just to make it look more wood-like. I'm not spending a lot of time on it, as you can plainly see. I just want to have something for us to try the sandpaper on. And of course, this scratching is one of the other tutorials that we did. Maybe a little knot right there. Okay, that's all done. That was just a metal Liquitex palette knife. Okay, we will let that dry and we can go up to alcohols. It's a unique look, which you probably can't use for a lot of things, but it has its purpose. I'm going to use this wonderful transparent Piro, I think is how you say it, orange, which is rather rich and needs some water to calm it down. I'll put a little red with that. Also a very strong color, so I'm going to add some water. And we're going to come in with some Payne's Gray over here. Just have some dark options. This is a blue tone Payne's Gray. They do have a very much more neutral Payne's Gray also. Or maybe this is the neutral. I'm not seeing a lot of blue in that. Payne's Gray comes in a couple of different ways, so you can look for that and use it differently according to whatever need you have. Okay, I'm just using 70% isopropyl alcohol. I have some 90 around the house. I actually have some 100 too. But I'm just going to, whoa, that comes out really fast. These are like total droplets. I kind of like the splatter effect with alcohol, preferably. Tiny droplets rather than the big ones. But you can do it either way. And that I was just sort of splashing, you could see. You can draw a line with it. It's pretty wet, as you can see. It's a little different over here where it started to dry. We're here where it was really wet. It already looks somewhat different. So that gives you an idea of which way you want to do it. Whether you want it drier when you put the alcohol on or whether you want it a little bit wetter. This is quite wet right here. This one right here has already lost its sheen, so I'll do a little strip right there. Just so you can see what happens after it's lost its sheen. Oh, that's actually kind of cooler. You can go back and add more if it didn't quite move as much as you wanted it to move. It's not as efficient the second time around. But it does still work, as you can plainly see. I'm going to let that dry for a couple of minutes and come back and do some more. Oh my God. Did this stupid freaking thing quit recording on me? No, it didn't. Thank God. Why did my screen time out? Plugged in. Oh, not plugged in. That's why. Okay. Go over that one more time. I'm going to go grab my 100% alcohol and see what that does. Putting it on the wet and the dry. And you know what? I don't really notice it much in the 70%. Kind of just a mess, to be honest with you. I don't really like it at all. But I'm going to keep putting some stuff on there as it dries and see if we... I think the permanent colors are probably not the best one to use this with. Probably try it with the colors that are easily lifted. Like the ones I have on this side. The panes. And there's obviously a little bit of something mixed in there. It's got some reds mixed in, but you can see it doesn't come up as well where the red is mixed with the panes as it does over here where it was just the panes. Panes gray. Let that dry just a little more. Well, we're going to let that dry and move on to sponges. And I know I did one before on trees where we used a lot of sponges. And so this is kind of a duplicate. And if you've seen that, forgive the duplication, but you can't really do textures without doing sponges. This is one of the sponges that I like. Look at that texture on it. It just kind of looks like a tree, doesn't it? Or a bush or something. Of course, that's big. So I tore off a piece of it so that I would have a smaller version of a little bush. And then you can pick up lots of them. I like the end of this one. I'm always picking these up at the store because they all have different looks depending on what you're doing. These almost look like rectangles and triangles, so a little different. These are really soft, so if I want something real wispy, these are particularly wispy. But you can use another part of the sponge too. Although this one, maybe this side for just occasional with a lot of spots of paint with just a lot of space in the middle. Even the Dollar has them. I'm going to use this one right here. Bend it just a little bit. And I'm going to do it with spritzing and without spritzing because I do like spritzing before sponging, but you can do this for moss on trees. If you were doing that, you would probably come in and add some secondary color. Let's see if we, I don't know. Yeah, you can do grass. I hadn't used it for grass before, but now that I get my hand out of the way, that kind of gives a rough texture of grass. If I wanted to do some gravel pathway or something, sponges are great for that. I do try to rotate my sponge some so I don't get the same over and over and over. There was way too much green on that to call that gravel, but I'll just say it was gravel with some grass that spilled on it, I guess. Ground cover. This is using sponges. And if you want to spritz to give it an extra effect, I'll do that on that one right there. And hit the paper. There we go. You'll watch that develop over a minute. But that is using sponges. You can add a second color while it's still wet, or you can wait for it to dry. Down here at the bottom it was dry. Up here it was still wet. So you can see what adding the second color looks like depending on the stage it's at. Okay, now I'm going to do the rice and some pasta, which I have to go get. Let's try adding a little more alcohol to this now that it's dried. Over here on this permanent side, it's just not really doing much. Evidently waiting until it dries is not the way to go. Get some nice blues in here so you can see it well. Payne's Gray. Cerulean. Did a drop of alcohol there. Okay. Let's see what happens with this. I have to leave this for probably a few hours for it to really do its thing. And then rotini pasta may or may not do anything. I don't, because of the shape. I thought I might have some spaghetti noodles, but I couldn't find any spaghetti noodles. So we'll see whether or not this does anything and whether it's interesting enough to reuse. It does seem to be doing something. I'll distribute my shapes a little differently. It looks too designed. Okay. We'll see what happens over the next couple of hours. Found another rotini noodle. There we go. Okay. We're going to let this dry. I will point out right up here where I spritzed it with water. You can see the movement now. Oops, I better not move that. You can see now where it moved more. Sometimes it takes it a minute to show up when you spritz. But I'll be back in a couple hours and hope it'll be dry enough to try the sandpaper also. Well, let's see what happens. Well, that didn't do much. I think the noodles absorbed better than the rice. But it's cool though. I mean, really. Maybe for making very tiny starry nights. I kind of like it. Okay, I'm back with some sandpaper. This is 60 grit, which happens to be what I could find nearby, but it's probably a little too gritty, but you can use the thinner ones if you like. See how it scratches highlights depending on how hard you push down. You can scratch in some pretty decent highlights. Scratch a little bit more here. Now, if you do enough, obviously you're going to tear way down low in the paper, so down into the fibers of the paper. But I'm doing a pretty light touch here because it is 60 grit, so it doesn't take much. But there you go. So if I was trying to make this look like wood, I would come and put my lines back in there more visibly. Oops, too wet. Maybe a little knot here and there. So that's with sandpaper. And then, of course, I probably should write blade as well, because you can take a blade. That's not a blade. So a blade will also scratch. This is the top side of the blade. That'll work. The actual blade part of it will also work. I usually just use the back side of the blade just so that I don't risk actually cutting my paper. So I tend to take the back side of it because it works just as well once the paper is dry. It's great for scratching out if you got carried away and you lost all your lights when you were painting, and you can just scrape in a little texture with a blade or some sandpaper, and boom, there's your whites back. Depending on how much I'm going to remove a little extra here so you can see, depending on how much you remove, depends on whether it's just a little bit or a lot. See, that's almost pure white paper right there. So it just depends on how much you decide to scratch off, whether you want just a small bit of texture or whether you're trying to actually return it to the white paper. So there you go. Those are those 4 textures. The alcohol came out pretty cool. Evidently the staining paints don't do as well with the alcohol as the more transparent, easy to lift colors are. But it's definitely looks pretty cool though. And then of course sponges for texture. And this was rice and pasta and sandpaper and a blade. So I do have a couple of bonus sessions. I think I can come up with 4 more, making it a total of 24. So check back in next week. And then what we'll do is we'll make some paintings using these different textures and kind of combining 2 or 3 different textures for each one, just to do small little paintings. And I think that'll be fun. So we'll see you guys next week, and keep on painting.